So here's a bold statement for you. I can help you to become more innovative, more creative, think bigger scale, and blow the freaking walls off the box in less than 30 days. And I guarantee it. You want to learn more? Stay tuned. All right, so thank you for coming back. My name is Ty Glover. I've been a consultant for close to 25 years. I've been an inventor, a product developer, because that's just what I'm naturally inclined to do. I'm also a husband of one and a father of two. But I want to talk to you about innovation and where it actually comes from, because there's this belief that ideas come from the ether. They're floating around in space, and about maybe 4 or 5 people will get that same idea at the same time. But it's the one who acts on it is the one who really gets the benefit from what they actually discovered. But it was an idea that went to everybody. And I tell you, that's not the way it works at all. Which is great to know, because it means that you can take control over ideation leading into innovation. So here's how basically things work. And you have to structure this around, there's universal principles at work here. First of all, universal principle of correspondence. As below, so as above. And what it basically says is, you can't get something from nothing. Meaning, if you're going to have a castle, or let's just say a palace, before you have the palace, you're going to have a castle. Before you have a castle, you're going to have maybe a fort. And then it's going to go smaller and smaller, maybe a house, maybe a shack, going down to maybe a lean-to or a hut, going down to even being back in the cave as you go further and further back in time. But things build because you have to have experiences that layer upon, and from that layering of the experiences, that's where the complexity of any given idea actually exists. So to talk about the universal principles, it's first important to recognize that there are 7. Mentalism, correspondence, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. And I'm not going to walk through them right now. But basically, when it comes to ideation and innovation, you can look directly at the universal principles of reality, because they lay the structure to where innovation comes from, whether it is the path or whether it is the actual ability to think and scale. So as we go back to ideas and where ideas come from, the average person, normal person, they're just walking around the street, they're doing their own thing just like we all do. They see things. Maybe it's in their work, or maybe it's in their area of study, but they see things, they take note of them, it's of interest, but then they move through. Or oftentimes it's not even of interest. They don't notice, they're not engaged in their surroundings. The Ideator is different. The Steve Jobs, the Elon Musk, those guys are different, because what they do is they look for the asymmetrical in the room or in any environment they get in. They look for that which captures their interest and pulls them a little bit to find out more. And what that Ideator does is they go and they start asking questions. I say they use their flight attendants, their 7 or their 15 or 20 attendants. For example, the what ifs, or how come, or why can't I, or shouldn't it be? All those different questions that we have a tendency of pondering when we see something that we just don't understand. That ideator, that person who has that tendency to fixate, they will go right at it, and they'll wonder about it, and they'll ask questions about it. They'll try to figure out how it works on their own, whatever it is. They'll even establish or create their own processes for how they would make it work, even though they don't even know how it works in itself. It's just the importance of creating the process in their mind that's so valuable. And once they do that, and once they have an idea, they've reconciled it, then they move on. See, now the average person would have just moved on 20 hours ago, wouldn't have captured anything, wouldn't have paid any attention to that, because it would have been of no significance to them. But that ideator, like I said, the Steve Jobs, the Bill Gates, they look at it, they focus, they recognize it, they understand the process, and then they lock it in. And then they move on. And that's so important, because looking at it, ideating around it, wondering it, pondering it, it creates a reference point of an understanding of that specific thing in their mind. It creates an experience. Now we all move on. We all move on in life, and we're going through whatever situation we're going through. The innovator, or rather the innovative mind, has an incredible ability to be able to go and look back at those, I'd say, soft-coded reference points or thoughts or considerations they paid about that particular node. And they're able to retrieve those. And that's when they start connecting these little different experiences that they've had throughout however long of a period of time that we may be talking about. So there's 3 different basic processes they've walked through with this entire scenario. The first one is called active observance. That's that part where they're walking in and they're looking for the asymmetric in any situation that is their domain. But even more importantly, out of their domain. For example, Steve Jobs coming up with the detachable cord. He had seen that on rice cookers when he was in Asia. Scripting, the writing, the calligraphy. Obviously, that was the creation or the genesis of the fonts for computers that we all know today. But they came from something else. You can't get something from nothing. For example, if I were to ask you, think of a red car. If you've ever had a red car, you automatically thought most likely of that red car. Or you may be thinking of a nondescript red car, but you're still thinking of something that you've seen or experienced in your past. You're not pulling from that which never took place, never was experienced, at least within your subconscious. We can't create something where nothing exists. So that's the important part. That's that active observance that the innovator does. The second part, now what do? It's called experimental curiosity. That's when you're actually bringing out those flight attendants. Roger Coupling used to talk about his 6 honest servants, where he would send them around to ask all those different questions. Well, you got to have these attendants working for you. They've got to always be pondering everything they see, wondering about, especially in processes or activities or things that are non-related to what you normally do, because that's where you're going to find your experiences where you can start to connect those pieces. So with that experimental curiosity, you're asking the questions of, well, why can't I? Or you're not understanding, or you're using critical thinking basically to ponder and to question that which you see. If it doesn't make sense and you know it doesn't make sense, then you have to challenge that or you won't grow. The third process, that's what I call connective assemblance. And that's where you're taking all these different reference points, all these different experiences that you've had over X number of period of years, or at least all your life. And you're connecting little situations together based on challenges that you're seeing, or problems, or even opportunities, or those questions of your flight attendants wondering why. And you start putting those different pieces together. And that's where big ideas come from. Scale, innovation. You got to go to the other universal principles for that. But at least from the standpoint of looking for the ideas itself, it's a universal law of correspondence. Steve Jobs is known for saying, you can't connect the dots by looking forward. You got to look backwards. And that's exactly what he was talking about. You have to look at those past experiences to be able to understand how you process a specific situation, a specific understanding of what you experienced and stored. And by pulling from all those reference points and asking again those questions, and that's from where great ideas emerge. All right, so I'm hoping you got 2 things out of this. First, the value of understanding where innovation comes from. But the second one, even more important, is the fact that you are empowered. There is an opportunity to be able to become more innovative, because innovation, going down to experiences, going down to everything else, law of cause and effect. Everything is a process. And when you understand the process, and therefore you start taking control of the process, that's when you can become empowered. When you start to understand the rules and the laws of innovation, then that's where you'll become more observant. You will walk into the room or walk into the situation and look at the things that are slightly off-centered and wondered more about the processes associated with A, how they got off-centered, B, why they're off-centered, and C, how can that be leveraged in another situation? Because that's where innovation arises. So thank you again for coming into my channel. This is Ty Glover. Truly appreciate you. Thank Different Nation. And please click below to like or somewhere else to subscribe. Thank you again. Cheers.